good morning, good morning. Welcome to my low budget accounting firm. I'd say down in Hobart, the one thing you all should be doing now is realising that, especially if you're a labourer and you've never had a business or you've never done anything that wasn't inside a kind of salary vessel, that is communist. You're in a socialist downslide, right? You're trying to use that socialist downslide nationally and internationally to then point out the missteps of the Liberal government and using overspending and budget blowouts to do that. That's very convenient for a kind of socialist-led coup, because obviously you are all in that together, and so it's unable to be pointed that you're sliding a whole system down an inflationary disaster. The one thing that will benefit Mr. Rockcliffe, because I'm in the same position because I'm defending against the same coup over in Western Australia, is that the assets currently held by the Tasmanian government are on an inflationary curve that is astronomical. So all the government actually needs to do is sit there and wait. If you don't take that inflationary explosion that is obviously there based on the printing of money globally, then you are missing the real story about the debt. They've spent money to buy things and provide things that you've demanded. You've demanded them. They've made precautionary preventative measures like getting a ferry to bring people there, and once that inflationary explosion is realised by this socialist global coup, and you realise that they've actually prudently invested money. Because the whole of Tasmania is subject to that every asset held by Tasmania, by the Tasmanian government, is subject to that. You're in deep communist waters if you don't start assessing all these things. I think there should be a clear indication of which Labor Party members have ever participated in anything resembling like business practice. You're all in a cult of global socialist ideals. And it just doesn't work. Like these calculations have become too difficult for a constant daily newspaper to keep track of. Especially if that daily newspaper is perpetuating this socialist myth. So it's like, where is the alternative viewpoint? It's in a really boring equation that no one's going to listen to. So you make a big scene, you make it try and, you're now, the Tasmanian government coup, led by Mr. Winter, is now, over here in Western Australia in a completely independent algorithm, is now peak level with massive riots taking place in the United States, in California. That's not a coincidence. Tasmania is not just holding the Liberal Party for Tasmania, they're holding the Liberal Party for the entire country. Where, in my opinion, most of the actual Liberal representatives have left running away from a system that is writing its own rule book as to how it views and how it interprets data across the entire country. And this is going to be seen so clearly when our Prime Minister finally goes and has a discussion with Donald Trump. Now, I'm not a complete supporter of Donald Trump, but at least he knows the basis of financial appreciation. That's his whole career was built on financial appreciation. If you don't understand it, if you don't understand that those buildings, those assets, the fact that a government is still standing, despite massive, embarrassing acts like this coming from the Tasmanian Labor Party, obviously at spear point by their terrified counterparts in all the other states. Just sit on your hands for a year. Go to bare minimum spending, because that's now been demanded by, there we go, now we have license to halt all projects. for 2 years and let the inflation just build up in the treasury that is Tasmania itself. If you can't weather this storm because you've become dependent on a government welfare system that is now from top to bottom, even a lot of professions, a lot of jobs would best actually be described, if you went back 100 years ago, as welfare, because you were sitting on your hands using outdated methods, using a bloated service sector to perpetuate your kind of socialist dreams. If you never have the bill, if everything is just an expense, it's just a salary mindset, you're not going to understand this move. They printed globally more money in the last 4 years than ever. That debt is going to be pennies on the dollar. As long as there is responsible enough stewardship, as long as it's not out of the ordinary, completely absurd spending that we're seeing over here in Western Australia with racetracks and fucking non-stop Coldplay concerts and bullshit, then there won't be a problem. You've gone back. This Labor coup has been so fierce and so disgustingly violent up to date. It didn't start the other day. It started 4 years ago. We're at the dying days of your failed coup. You failed. You had no option but to attempt this in Tasmania. And it has brought disrepute to the entire state when it's now the laughing stock of the country. I don't know enough about the nitty-gritty intricacies of Parliament. But I'd say as a Tasmanian descendant sitting over here in Western Australia in an actual state that has been ravaged by this Labor Party's nonsense, in a position clearly listed in all my documentation that my children are being held hostage and my father's estate is to be held in limbo, all my debts are still able to be met because of this inflationary loop. This is no different than Tasmania. Tasmania is now being held hostage by the National Australian Labor Party. Well, it's time to send a mirror back and say, listen, you are bringing the entire state into disrepute by your actions. You are making us look like an unorganised ramble of fucking two-headed dickheads, which just perpetuates the type of discrimination that my father saw in Western Australia and that I've now seen in Western Australia. But my links to that island are solid and they go all the way back to England. That island, the buildings you're sitting in, the infrastructure you're now arguing this bullshit in, goes all the way back to England. And don't forget that. If you can't actually put forward if this is just a gang up and bully session in that place, then dissolve the whole fucking thing and start again. Governor and all. Because I don't trust the connection. I want to see the communication between the governor and the king. If that does not exist, then push them all out of the buildings. Assemble your own vote about that. Do you believe this was a coup? Because I can't for a second believe that the king, with all his nonsense going on there, really thinks that this is necessary, that this is going on. I want to know who elected that governor in there. I want to know under whose authority are they there. And now even this delay session, what is this? You're a small state. Some of the figures, Jeremy Rockwell the other day said 50% of youth crime in Tasmania is being undertaken by 50 people. That is nonsense. That should not be elevating. And the financial and the political struggles of that region should not be elevating to this level. This is an interruption of the entire country. by an immature, unprepared, absolute nonsense individual. And I want to know his exact background that thinks it gives him permission to actually comment on this level of financial complexity. And I want to know how stable my family's homeland is to weather the storms coming up, because I was going to move there. I might not move there now. There's no way in a million years, if Labor gets in there, no, I not only will be leaving Australia, I'll be leaving Tasmania, I'll be going back to England to go and settle some very old scores. This complete coloniser myth is a middle, it's not even middle class, it's like the story has always been Parliament against the Crown, against the Crown, and it just is like, now you're the Crown. Throwing your weight around, but you're not one person that can be individual, like that can be brought out of that mess. You're just a big mob. And this action in Tasmania, I'm telling you directly, is putting a match in the tinderbox of Australia. This is not going to be a peaceful submission. If this bullshit continues in the country, it will be all-out war in the streets. We haven't had a civil war in this country yet. And that's from my family, 180 years without a civil war. And there's no confusion as to who started this war and for what end. You're going to dispossess the families that built structure and then hold up your disorder, your chaos, your overspending in the entire nation, your unpreparedness for actual things, your constant appeasing to a mob, building your own kind of private army from individuals that have been falsely led to believe that they are the most needed, the professions in the world, but really it's looking like just a giant scam machine to launder money through the Labor government system and to build an army of immigrants, of a standing service industry army, all held under the Union Labor Party banner. Well, that's a civil war. That's already a coup against the Crown. That's already an attempted revolution, but without the words, without the leadership required to make a revolution. Now that is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. At least in the hideous United States, they had the gall to actually say what they were doing on paper. I want to see that. Otherwise, we're just sitting there waiting with our hands sitting on our hands, waiting for the inevitable attempted genocide on the inhabitants that are descendants from England over 100 years ago. With the concentrated blame of 10,000 years of civilised genocide on painted on us by a bunch of pirates. The fiction you are trying to spin is going to fall in your face. It is not real. We are not the United States. That is not what we are. That is not how this is going to work for you. If I was Jeremy Rockcliffe, if I was the Liberal Party right now, a united Liberal Party, to perhaps send a clear message to the other Liberal parties of the entire nation, to maybe start, instead of appeasing to Labor Party's fictitious kind of assemblement that they're making, they're like, this is the norm, this is the new normal of the Labor Party. Fuck the new normal. It's brought nothing but chaos and disrepute to the entire country, provably. I'd walk in there with a mirror and I'd be like, there's your fucking problem. I'd say this has been a complete waste of time. This has wasted an entire week's worth of parliamentary process. We've now got this weird attention from the entire nation. And it's an exposure of this narcissistic individual who believes that his thing is more important than Tasmania, more important than Australia, more important than the Commonwealth. Just shine it right back at them. No confidence. Not just through Winter, but not just through the Tasmanian Labor Party, through the National Labor Party. The last stand of the Liberal government in Australia is going to take place there. And it's going to bounce straight off that mirror and ricochet right back through every single Labor Party government in the country. What have you done for me lately? It's all well and good to stand on structures you didn't build, to inhabit systems that you didn't conceive, and throw judgment. Well, I think Judgment Day has come for the Labor Party, and it's going to start down on that apple aisle. Hopefully today.